Listen, there are a ton of things that I would love to tell you about camp, but instead of listening to me for a little bit this morning, some of our teens are going to come and share just some of their favorite memories. So, those of you who are planning on speaking, why don't you make your way on up here, and don't be shy, come on up. I don't care what order you go in, but go right ahead and introduce yourselves and then share away.
I'm Kirsten, and I went to teen camp, and my favorite part of camp was worship.
Hi, my name's Jade, and my favorite part of camp was the games that we played with everybody in our youth group, and I'm also very thankful for Riley being there and teaching us all about her mission to Africa and so much what it's like there.
I'm Owen. I attended the teen camp this year. My favorite part was playing Capture the Flag. One thing that I took away from my week there is that God is a God of second chances.
My name is Jaron, and I went to teen camp this year. My favorite part of camp was playing Capture the Flag.
My name's Kayla, and I went to Round Lake Christian Camp, and my favorite part was the slide and the dance party.
My name's Sayla, and I went to Round Lake, and my favorite part was worship.
Good job. They thought that they were going to have a video of them sharing their favorite memories, but we switched it up and wanted to have them up here sharing. And listen, that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of some of the things. Let me tell you, and I don't want to take a whole lot of time because we've already spent a lot of time here this morning with the slideshow and stuff, but let me share you one of my favorite memories. We played a game where they had to build a shelter. Everybody was split into teams. And what primarily what I'm talking about today is our teen camp. Our theme, you see our shirts. Now, we had a lot of kids go to a lot of different camps, and I know Kayla, she shared, she went to Round Lake. I know Sayla was at Round Lake. Jillian was there as a counselor as well. But I'll talk primarily about our teen camp, just because I was there, and most of the pictures, about 99% of the pictures you saw were from our week of camp. But we split them into groups when we got there, and they stayed with these teams the entire time, anytime that we had some sort of competition. Well, one of the competitions was building a shelter, and I think we gave them an hour to build a shelter, and you saw a lot of the pictures. I mean, somebody was holding just a large stick. There were a lot of tarps that were found, and we told them whatever you can find at camp, you can use. Now, with the exception of just a few things that we didn't want to accidentally ruin. And then the idea was after that hour was up, we were going to go grab the garden hose, and we were going to spray their shelter with them in it. And if they stayed dry, well, then they won points for their team. Well, as I went to turn the garden hose on, there just happened to be like a light shining from heaven on a leaf blower. Like, this is perfect. Wonder if this works. And I found a battery. It was on charge, and it worked. And so I held the leaf blower. Brad held the hose, and we looked for any crack that we could possibly find to soak the kids. And I think two of them, they were perfect. None of them got wet. One of them was, we found a little crack, and like one of the kids crawled out soaking wet. The rest of them were dry. And then one of the groups completely failed. And it was, they were wet by the time that they came out. And we laughed, and we had a good time. I'll tell you one more thing. We had a food contest, because it wouldn't be camp if there's not some kind of food contest, and everything that they ate was worth points, and I have the weakest stomach in the world, and everything makes me gag, but I was doing pretty good until I saw Rachel start gagging because she was watching Madden trying not to puke, and then out of nowhere here comes Luke with everything that we could possibly have. He ate like it was candy. I mean, it was. And these were the grossest foods that I could find at Walmart. He was willing to eat. Listen, I've said this 100 times before, and I'll say it 100 times again. I believe there is something special about camp. And we do this Camp Sunday because we want to share and say thank you for all that you do at Meadowview to help send our students to camp. But we also want our younger kids to realize man, there's something exciting and something fun about camp. And I get it. If you didn't grow up in the church and you hear things like church camp for a week away, that sounds awful. I would say give it a chance. I've heard somebody say this before. 1 week at church camp is just as valuable as 1 year of Sunday school. And I believe that hearts can be changed and lives can be changed at church camp. And I want to share just a little bit today from what one of our speakers shared when we were at camp this year. We were fortunate. We had Riley with us. She spent the entire time with us. She spoke to our students a couple different times. We had a youth minister from a local church come and speak to our kids one time. And then we had a buddy of mine that drove. He drove about 2 hours to come down and to speak twice. And in fact, this is how dedicated he was. He spoke to us on Friday night during our main session, spent the night, got up that next morning and had to go to a meeting down in Hillsboro for a camp down there, drove back, spoke to us, went home, preached the next day, and drove back to Hillsboro and spent a week at camp and enjoyed a time with his family there. And it's not just me that believes in camp. There are other people that believe in camp. So I want to share a little bit today about what we had talked about. But let me start by asking you this question. Do you ever have a conversation with a younger generation and they say a word that you just don't understand? Right? And it doesn't have to be just this younger generation. It can be any younger generation. This always happens. This generation will say words like skibbity. Anybody heard that? Anybody out here? Some of you are like shaking your head like, no, that's not a real word. I don't think it's a real word either, but a lot of our youth say that word. Or sigma, okay? I don't know what these words mean a whole lot yet, but we deal with this. Every generation deals with this. Maybe at one point you're hearing words like sweet, and it's not talking about the way something tastes. Somebody says, man, that's sweet. Or dope, and you're not talking about drugs. You're talking about it being awesome. Or maybe even before that, it was words like rad or gnarly or whatever. Every generation comes up with these new words or these new phrases. Now, parents, I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Now, there's a caution that comes with this, but there's a website called Urban Dictionary, urbandictionary.com. And if your teens or some of the younger people are using words that you are not familiar with, you can go and you could type this in. Now, I caution you, you could type this in and anybody can put whatever response they want in there. That's the caution, so be careful. But I typed in some of these words this week that some of our kids say, words like skibbity, and I think you can even say skibbity toilet. Is that right? I don't know. One of the phrases that we often hear our youth say, you see it on our shirts, and it was our theme for the week, let's go. Now, I typed this into Urban Dictionary because I thought, let's see what Urban Dictionary says the definition is, and here's what popped up. It says, things cringy 8-year-old Fortnite players say when they win a game. And then they give an example, and the example is this. Yeah, we got a victory royale. Let's go, right? Let's go has become this phrase, and it's actually been used I would say for quite a few years now. But just the other night, I'm sitting at the football game, the Tri-Valley football game, and there was a play that happened. I don't remember what the play was, but one of the Tri-Valley players was coming off the field toward the sidelines, and he's extremely excited, and he's yelling. I can't hear him, but I can see him mouthing the words as he's flexing coming off the sidelines. Let's go, let's go. We chose this for our theme, and we paired this with the Great Commission. We wanted our teens at this camp that we had this summer to be encouraged and challenged to go and back home, go into the world, and share the gospel with their friends. And so all of our speakers were given topics to speak on. Some spoke on going boldly, and the first night was just simply on going. And our speaker, Jason Cool, he spoke that first night, and he spoke from the book of Jonah. And that's where we're going to be today. Now, I will say this. I know we've been doing this for a while. I promise I won't spend 30 minutes preaching right now. I'll do it as quickly as I possibly can. But I want to share a lot of what he shared about because he challenged us. And I think it's a great challenge for us as a congregation as well. So if you have your Bibles and you want to turn to Jonah, flip there. We're going to talk more about it than really spend a lot of time diving into certain scriptures. But I know this is one of the Bible stories that we hear kind of at a young age and learn at a young age because of the events that take place. But let me summarize it real quick if you're not familiar with what takes place in the book of Jonah. Chapter 1, God comes to Jonah and simply tells him, hey, I want you to go to the city of Nineveh and I want you to preach against the city. And Jonah doesn't want to do it. He boards a ship going as far away from Nineveh as he possibly can. And while he's on the ship, there's a storm that arises and the sailors are scared. They're trying to lessen and lighten the cargo, throwing things overboard so that they can get back to shore the best that they possibly can. They're afraid for their lives. All the while, Jonah is down in the bottom of the boat. And not really helping. He's hiding. He's just heading in the opposite direction of what God wants him to do. Eventually, the sailors come down and question him and tell him to pray to his God. And he tells them, man, he's the issue, that God is trying to get his attention. Just throw him overboard and everything will be fine. And they don't want to do it, but eventually they do. And they throw Jonah into the sea. And verse 17 says, but the Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Chapter 2, Jonah's praying. That's what chapter 2 is dealing with. Chapter 3, Jonah goes and does what God wanted him to do. Even though it was reluctant, he went and he shared with the people of Nineveh that God wanted them to turn from their ways. And if they didn't, then they were going to perish. And then chapter 4, we get this moment where Jonah is just upset and he's mad because God did exactly what Jonah believed that God was going to do. And he had mercy on these people. And he showed his love for these people. That's the quick summary of it. It's 4 chapters. I beg you to read this sometime this week. It won't take you very long, but sometime in your personal study time, just read through the book of Jonah. And one of the things that Jason said when he spoke to us on that very first night, he said this. He said, Jonah 1:1 starts by saying this, the word of the Lord came to Jonah. And he said, and I wrote this down because I loved what he had to say. He said, isn't this a beautiful place to start? What if our lives started with the word of the Lord? What if our days started with the word of the Lord? What if our relationships, what if our work, what if everything that we did started with the word of the Lord? This is where we start in Jonah chapter 1, and it quickly turns into this, Jonah chapter 2. God tells Jonah to go. Some versions might say, arise and go. I think if it were written today, God would say, let's go. And he tells Jonah, I want you to go and do this. And Jonah wants nothing to do with Nineveh. He wants nothing to do with Nineveh because Nineveh had a reputation. Nineveh is where it's current day Iraq is where Nineveh was located. These people at this point in time were horrible. They had a reputation that preceded themselves. Now God was telling Jonah to go preach against Nineveh. He didn't say go preach to Nineveh. You could say that I'm preaching to us. I don't really like that phrase, but you could say that. I'm not preaching against anything this morning, but God wanted Jonah to go preach against Nineveh. Jonah was a well-known prophet. He was a well-known preacher. He was a hero at that point in time, and he arose and he went, but he went in the opposite direction. He went as far away from God and what God was asking him to do as he possibly could, at least until God got his attention. And I find it ironic that all throughout the book of Jonah, that Jonah is the one person, or we could say the one thing, that does not listen to God's direction. Think about it. The storm that arose as Jonah was hiding in the bottom of the boat, sailing towards Tarshish, listen to God. The wind listened to God. The people of Nineveh listened to God. In chapter 4, we read about a plant and a worm and wind again. All these things are listening and obeying what God is telling them to do, but it's the prophet Jonah who is saying, no, God, I don't want to do it. It took more work for Jonah to disobey God than it did for him just to obey God. And I wonder if that's not true in our lives. How many times is God asking us to do something and we work so hard not to hear from God or not to follow what God is asking us to do, and we end up working more than if we would just obey God? Jason challenged our teens. He said this, teens. He said, God is not asking you to run to Nineveh, the city of lies, and preach against it, but God is most certainly asking us to go to our friends, to go to our family, to go to our coworkers, to go to our neighbors, our teammates, and share the good news of Jesus. And again, I ask, are we doing what God is asking us to do, or are we running in the opposite direction as fast as we possibly can? And I get it. This can be a hard thing to do. I've said this before. I have no problem sharing this. I am an introvert. I'm not a great people person. Rachel will tell you, my kids will tell you, we go home on Sunday afternoon, grab lunch. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted because I've spent a lot of energy dealing with people on Sunday morning. We introverts, we don't thrive in these moments. Extroverts, like my wife, thrives when there's a large group of people around. It's easy for you extroverts in this room to go and strike up a conversation with any and everybody or anything. It doesn't really matter. You could talk to anybody and it's no big deal. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, we were at the Dresden Parade and we were handing out VBS flyers and we had a float in there. And I remember at one point, I'm walking down the road with Riley and Grant, and the three of us are talking like, man, this is not where we want to be. We would rather be receiving the candy, sitting on the side, than walking down and handing stuff out. And I'm joking with them like, yeah, this is hard for me. And I happen to say, this is like Rachel thrives in these moments. And I looked over and she's walking down the middle of the road in the middle of Dresden with the biggest smile on her face, as happy as she could be, just sharing VBS invites with any and everybody who would possibly get them. For some of us, it's hard to go and to share the good news of Jesus, but never once does the scripture say, well, if you're an introvert, then you get a pass. Or if you struggle talking to other people, you get a pass. God was looking at Jonah saying, Jonah, please go to the city of Nineveh and show them my love. This act of Jesus, or of God sending Jonah to Nineveh, was an act of great love by him. I remember hearing this a few years ago, and maybe you heard this, but Tom Brady had just won his third Super Bowl, and he is being interviewed after his third Super Bowl and being asked about how he feels and his emotions after this, and his answer was quite simple. He said this. He said, why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think that there is something greater out there for me? And he says this. He says, God, it's got to be more than this. See, I believe that we live in a world who desperately wants to know about the good news of Jesus. Now, there are people that you encounter and will encounter that don't want to hear, but I think there are a lot of people who do. See, if you remember back to this account of Jonah, as he's hiding in the bottom of the boat, the pagan sailors who are trying to do everything that they can to save their lives, they come to the bottom of the boat and they question Jonah and they say, will you cry out to your God? It was a desperate act of, hey, your God, you cry out to him, maybe he can save us. And I believe that we live in a world where there are people who whether they say that or not, are crying out to us saying, man, can you please share the good news of your God with us? And Tom Brady says, again, his quote, he says, God, it's got to be more than this. And I find it ironic that that's the way that he answered it. It's got to be more than this. And the thing that he is missing is the thing that he said at the very beginning of the sentence. It's the God of the universe. See, we serve a God of redemption. We serve a God of second chance. We serve a God who loves us far greater than we can possibly imagine. And Jonah learned that. Our teens learned that. At the end of the week, we were talking about some of the things that we talked about and some of the things that we learned and some of the things that they enjoyed and some of the things that they didn't. And it was great hearing the things that they enjoyed. I will tell you this, one more quick story. One of the things that they didn't enjoy, we went tubing, which is great. You just sit in a raft for a couple hours and you don't do anything. Except this one turned into about 5 hours, and our teens struggled because they couldn't do anything. And most of them said they absolutely hated tubing because there was nothing to do except for sit in a raft and to float. But a lot of them repeated back, and I know Owen shared it this morning, and many of them have shared this, that one of their takeaways is that we do serve a God of second chances. A God who is willing to give us time and time again a chance to come back and seek forgiveness. I'm going to go ahead and invite the praise team to come up here, and I'm going to leave you with just one final thought. When I was sitting there that night, as Jason was speaking on this first night, and I was taking notes, and I'm already thinking we're having a Camp Sunday come up, and this is something that I want to talk about. I knew in the back of my mind that it wasn't that long ago that I actually stood up here and spoke on the book of Jonah. And as soon as I had finished that next Sunday night, Sam started a 4-week study on the book of Jonah, and I thought, well, I don't know, should we do this or should we talk about something else? And I wanted to share this because I thought Jason did such a good job of challenging our teens. But I did go ahead and go back to my notes to see what it was that I had talked about and if there's anything I could pull from that. And I was looking through my notes and I came across one thing that I said when I preached on this the last time. And I simply said this, and this will be the last thing I leave you with. God told Jonah to go, and Jonah told God no. And I want you to just imagine for a moment if the person who shared the good news of Jesus with you told God no. What would your life look like right now? I know that's hard to speculate and hard to figure out, but think about that for a minute. If the person who shared the good news of Jesus with you simply would have told God, no, I'm not going to do that, where would your life be right now? What if Sam said no to God? What would this place look like? Where would our lives be? What would a Meadowview look like if Sam would have said, no, God, I'm not going to do that? What's that look like in the lives of those that we love? If God is telling us, let's go, share the good news, you get the responsibility, you get the privilege of sharing the good news. And what would life look like if we told God no? I hope that's not our story. I hope that we are people who don't want to jump in a boat and run in the farthest direction, but instead we get to share of what God is doing in our lives and what God has done in our lives. You know, we end every Sunday morning with a time of invitation, and we're going to do that right now. We're going to sing a song, time of decision, and maybe you're sitting in this room right now, and maybe that's been the conversation that you have with God. God, I just not right now. Now, God, it's not the right time for me to give my life to you. I would challenge you to let it be, to go, to quit waiting, quit fighting, quit running in the opposite direction. There's nothing greater in this life that we could possibly do than to follow Jesus and make him Lord of our life. Or maybe you're sitting in this room and you have made Jesus Lord of your life, but you've just not been following him. Then I would encourage you while we sing this song to spend some time in prayer and some time having a conversation with God that is simply between you and him, and a challenge to quit running and to start following and to start sharing. Or maybe you're sitting in this room and you want to make this place your church home. We would love to come alongside of you. We'd love for you to come alongside of us, and we want to go and to share the good news of Jesus with those that we come in contact with. To our community, to our family, to our friends. What's that look like for us? It's going to look different for everybody. How do we begin? How do we even begin to share the good news of Jesus? I would encourage you to start in your four walls. Start with your family. Start with those who you are closest with, and just share the beauty of the gospel with them. And then from there, branch out and share with those that you come in contact with. One more time, imagine if the person that shared the good news of Jesus with you had told God no, what would your life look like?